Welcome to the Jack Rice Show. As we follow what's going on in Washington, as we follow the presidential race, a lot of people are trying to understand what's going on in Congress, trying to understand where things are going. And I want to turn to somebody who I think has an interesting look at it based upon his experience on the Select Committee on Intelligence, Congressman Pete Hoekstra. Congressman, thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, Jack, it's good to be with you.
You know, a lot of people are watching what's happening right now in Congress, and for the longest time, and I know you remember this too, everybody seemed to obsess upon Iraq. I can take us back to 2005, 2006, but you and I both know the big issue that seems to be driving everybody right now is the fact that it cost me $100 to fill up my gas tank.
That's exactly right. I mean, we're finally paying the price for 15, 20, 25 years of neglect, building no new refineries, allowing for no new exploration of American oil, no development of nuclear energy. And so what we're into is we've got a shortage of energy. There's a shortage of energy on a global basis, and prices are skyrocketing, and the American consumer is paying the price.
Well, the fact that you're from Michigan, the fact that you see this on the car side of things, look, I can go back to 2005. I talked to people at the White House, and nobody set standards saying, you know what, we have to have better miles per gallon, not just if you're in the mood to do it, but we're going to require that. And I see Republicans jumping on the Dems saying it's their fault, and yet my response would be, you know what, the Republicans weren't doing so well, the Democrats weren't doing so well, and all I know is it's still costing me $100 to fill up my gas tank.
There is clearly plenty of blame to go around. There was no leadership. The leadership basically looked away from this problem and just thought that things would go fine. You know, one of my critiques of the president is really, and of the leadership here in Washington and the country, is after 9/11, we should have, and you've got an intelligence background, we should have been able to put two and two together. Let's see, attacks from the Middle East. Our energy is coming from the Middle East, at least a significant portion of our energy is coming from the Middle East. You know, maybe we ought to really work towards getting to be energy independent. That doesn't mean we get 100% of our energy from the United States, but we ought to be at a position where we're only importing 15 to 20% of our energy. We should have done the CAFE standards. We should have done exploration. We should have done alternative fuels, and we should have done more nuclear power, all beginning immediately after 9/11. And we would now be 7 years down that path towards getting to be energy independent. But you're absolutely right. We didn't do it.
Congressman Pete Hoekstra is my guest. Again, Congressman, if I listen to what you just said, in some ways, I heard, dare I say it, Democrats pounding in the very same way, and I will see Republicans say, let the free market reign. They will take care of it. You and I both know business is not about public good. It's about making as much money as possible. It's about government. It's about the role of government to ensure that the public good is done. Isn't that Congress's job? Isn't that the White House's job?
Oh, that's exactly right. I mean, hey, I'm all for as much free market as possible. But when as national leaders, we have the responsibility to take a look at what's going on in the market. And when we put ourselves in a position where we're importing 60% of our oil, much of it from countries and regimes that are hostile to the United States, you take a look at Venezuela, you take a look at the instability in Nigeria and the instability in the Middle East, and you say, as a nation, that doesn't make sense. So we're going to intervene in these international markets, not by manipulating prices or supply and demand, but what we're going to do is we're going to start a national strategy saying we're going to become energy independent. We are going to, on a national security basis, we are going to become energy independent, and we're going to then put in free market incentives to increase production and reduce demand right here in the United States.
If you talk about reducing demand, maybe one of the easiest ways is to allow oil to get as high as it ultimately will get. Won't that do that in the end? I mean, I used to think $4 a gallon might do it. I'm not buying that now. I actually think it would have to be substantially higher because most of us can't adapt sufficiently to do the things necessary.
Well, Jack, I think I don't like to disagree with folks with your kind of background. I was at Ford Motor Company this week on Monday. The mix of domestic car and truck sales has flipped from about 60-40 trucks, SUVs, and those types of things to now 60-40 in favor of cars and smaller cars. So consumers are changing their buying preferences. Ford has said they've never seen a shift in the market occur this quickly, and it is because of fuel prices. At my own family, my son-in-law just went out and they bought a moped. And so instead of driving their car around, instead of taking the car to work, he's taking a moped that gets 100 miles per gallon. So
seems like genius to me.
Yeah. So in small ways, it's going to still take a while because that's only new car sales, and it doesn't change the fleet that is out there of over 100 million cars. But consumers are changing their buying patterns, and they're changing their driving patterns, and so. You will. I think people are. I think what was it? I think in the last quarter, gasoline purchases were down 1%. So it is having an impact.
Congressman Pete Hoekstra is my guest. He's the ranking Republican of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, I'd be remiss if I didn't go down that path for a little while. I recall one of the last times I was in Iraq about a year ago, and I remember thinking to myself, let's look at who our best friends are in the Middle East. And I was also in Egypt at the National Democratic Party convention. I guess it was in November. And I think about the close relationships we have with Musharraf in Pakistan, Mubarak in Egypt, with the Saudi royal family. We talk about democracy, and we can wrap ourselves around this all we like. Have we contemplated who our quote-unquote best friends are?
Oh, I think we've taken a very close look at it, and I think the president was just there over the weekend, and basically, he gave a speech, but he also lectured these countries. But part of the reason, I would have hoped he would have gone there with a little bit more of a humble attitude, because I've been to Egypt a number of times. We've talked with them significantly about what went on in Iraq. Part of the deteriorating relationships we have with some of these regimes is because we keep coming in with a very arrogant attitude, and many of these regimes warned us in advance about what could happen in Iraq if we went in. And the disappointing thing is many of the predictions that they made were right on.
Congressman, I don't mean to step on you right there, but if I could follow up with just that point.
Yep.
This is something I'm really confused by, and again, your expertise would really be appreciated here. One of the questions that has been asked of this president is that if you knew everything that you knew now, would you still go in? And the answer was yes. And I heard him say that, and I thought to myself, let me get this right. No weapons of mass destruction, gotcha. No connection with Al-Qaeda, gotcha. The split between the Sunni and the Shia, gotcha. Oh, and you're still going to go in? And the answer is yes. I swear I've been trying to figure it out, and for the life of me, I can't do it.
No, I think you're right. If we knew everything that we knew today about what was actually going on in Iraq, what the state of the Saddam regime was, and what the consequences of us going in and removing Saddam, I think you have to be very realistic and say, we might have reached a very different conclusion, because we had a whole lot of information. To just stand here blindly and say, oh, no, I would have done exactly the same thing. I think, I can tell you, I don't think Congress would have done the same thing. I don't think Congress would have been supportive. You've got it in your business, we've got it in ours. Sometimes you have to be willing to admit that maybe you made a mistake, because the facts have proven out differently from what you expected they would be. Doesn't mean that you did the wrong thing based on the information that you had at the time, but that as you got more information, you clearly got to go back and reassess. I did that in the business world. I do that in Congress all the time. We're doing it right now on No Child Left Behind. I've got I voted against it. 400 people voted in favor of it. I think there's about 300 of those people who voted in favor of No Child Left Behind who now wish they'd voted against it.
If we stay with the Congress and look back at that 2002 Iraq funding vote, that Iraq vote to allow the president to make this call, and I guess it was the majority of Democrats voted against it. The majority of Republicans obviously voted for it, and a considerable number of Democrats voted for it as well.
Right. Knowing
everything you know now, would you have voted against it now?
I think I probably would have. I think when you take a look at it, it probably is understanding how fragile the Saddam regime was, how fragile the infrastructure was. It's very possible that this regime might have collapsed on under its own weight, and that by waiting, you would have been better off. I'm still firmly of the mind, Jack, that somewhere along the line we were going to have to deal with Saddam, or that he was going to be removed, would have to be removed from power. But it's now becoming clear that it might have happened internally with the Iraqis leading the way rather than the American military coming in and taking care of the job.
Congressman Hoekstra, thank you very much for joining me.
Jack, enjoyed it.